Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. I want to welcome you to Diversity Conversation, and I'm joined by my brother and good friend,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. Say that again, president and CEO. I need to hear that again, man.
President and CEO. Man, it feels good. Make It Plain Consulting.
Make It Plain Consulting. Man, this has been quite a week, hasn't it?
It's been quite a week on a number of different fronts, but looking forward to jumping into our conversation. But what a week this week, and I guess maybe over the last 100 years in some aspects, right?
You mean we've been on this journey for a while, huh?
Yeah, we have.
Oh my goodness, man. How was your week? Let's start off by just sort of going through your week, man. How were things with your family, the business? How did your week go?
Family is good. Family is plugging away. My young son academically is doing well. They're still in virtual and remote learning right now. And he is settling in even more so, where before he wasn't feeling it, right? He wasn't feeling it. He really wants to be in front of the teacher with his classmates and all that good stuff. And I get it. And so I'm just supporting him, supporting my wife as she's in school as well, getting another degree.
Okay.
She has multiple degrees already. And then for myself, I'm just taking some time to reflect and time to rest wherever I can get it.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a really another interesting week for us as a family and in our business. My wife, Judy Ellis, has accepted a position with a company in England. And just real glad for her, man. And it just really says a lot to other women who have raised their families. Some of them sort of put their careers on pause for a few years, even though she worked with us throughout the time, to be able to go back and get a significant corporate senior VP kind of job, man, over in England, where she won't have to go there. She'll be able to do it from her home, is exciting. And I'm just so enthusiastic for her. It's great when you accept a new position that's significant enough that it causes you to put your own business that she was really off to the races with her own business, but she put that on pause. And, sometimes when you accept a position, a few days afterwards, you get sort of buyer's remorse, like, oh, Lord, I don't know if I made the right decision. But everything that's transpired after her saying yes has only affirmed that decision. The way that they are bringing respect to the table and really admiring her talent, skills, and abilities, and seeing her as the subject matter expert that she is. Tommy, I'm just grateful, man. And I'm just glad to see her continuing to blossom, into her 50s. So that's exciting.
Yeah, Eric, I would be interested if she was available and interested as well, to have Judy on the show for an interview.
Yes.
Because here's one thing that I know, and that what you spoke about is here in America, obviously the job market is what it is. We've been in a downturn economy because of COVID over the last year.
Right.
But easily over the last 10 to 20 years, the world from an employment perspective has become more and more flat.
Right.
And so Judy has secured employment with an England-based company that's global and international. Right. And I don't think that many professionals who are in the job search market are actually looking at those opportunities.
Right.
I'm familiar with it because it's something that we do at Make It Plain, but would love to have her on the show to really talk about her journey.
I love that, Tommy. I agree with that too. I'll give you just a little bit of a sneak preview for those that are listening and thinking about what's the magic formula. Part of it is how active are you getting on social media? And I think that some things that she did on social media really expanded her footprint where she wasn't even looking and people found her.
Yep.
And so I'd say to everybody, always kind of build your brand, protect your brand. You know, she had a couple of interviews that were on LinkedIn. She had an article in Forbes magazine. And so all of those things brought attention to her. And it really reminds me of God saying in his word that, you know, sort of your gifts will make room for you. And so that's one of the things that I'd like to take. But I think that's a great idea, Tommy, is to have her on because it really gives encouragement to people that the globe is available to us, that we are not limited. And I'll tell you one other thing, man. I just got to really get excited about this. I can't really say the name of Shonda Rhimes' new show that she has that's on Netflix. I think it's called Brighton or Brickton or something like that. But it's like an England-based show, and it's really all white mainly. You know, it's got black people in there. And it's blown up. I mean, the show is just absolutely blown up. And I believe that NBC was first working with her on this, but somehow they offended her. You know, she asked for just a couple of things. Briggerton, Judy is weighing in. Judy, I hope you heard Tommy say we need to have you on the show too. So, but I love that story. Judy was sharing it with us that, you know, they were really trying to court her for this show. She just asked for something as simple as some, tickets to Disney or some friends. And they sort of scoffed about that and finally said, no problem. And then a friend went there and the tickets didn't work. And so she then talked about that. And they said, well, don't you have enough? Can't you afford tickets? And it just reminds me sometimes, Tommy, that people of color, women of color, sometimes just get seen as difficult. And they're not given the same. I mean, that's a very small thing.
Yes.
We know that actors, actresses, especially in the dominant culture, they ask for all kinds of things all the time, and people are jumping through 1,000 hoops. Yeah. And they just look at women of color sometimes like they're not really clients or customers or special enough.
Right.
And so they chose not to give her the A1 treatment. So she walks away with this multi-million-dollar project, man, that has blown up and it's number 5 on Netflix in terms of moneymakers and level of success. I mean, so you talk about the business case for diversity, Tommy.
Yeah.
That's just powerful. And I know that there are others that may want to weigh in on that. But just loving what's happening with our family, with everybody. You know, the kids are all doing well. And then our business continues to grow, continues to expand. I was working with a new client this week. I was doing a webinar sort of the night after the Georgia runoff election. And I believe that some people brought that kind of energy and a little bit of frustration to the table. And so I've gotten to the place, Tommy, where, you know, when I was young, if you wanted to spar and, you know, kick it up and argue and debate, man, I would go ahead and engage you.
Yeah.
The older I've gotten, Tommy, I don't even expend none of my argumentative juices.
Yeah.
I made a determination, Tommy, that you're just not worth it. Yep. You're not going to take no years off my life investing some of my emotion into what you're saying.
Yeah.
We can either get this, and I certainly, Tommy and I can help you get it, or you cannot. I mean, if you want to get it, that's fine with me, man. I just go ahead and sit it out. I ended up advising him at the end. I said, you know what? I said, you guys are really, really bright. And I said, it sounds to me like let's not make any assumptions about the future.
Yeah.
I think you need to go back, have yourself a conversation when I'm not there, and talk about, do you really even need a consultant? Huh? What? Like, are you firing us?
Right.
I'm not firing you, but all I'm saying, you got a lot of answers.
Yeah.
You got a lot of answers. And, you know, this thing, it's a journey. And, but a lot of people, you know, they're sharp. And so maybe there's no need for outside support. And so I'm grateful, man. I wouldn't do anything like that out of spite, man. I really always want the best for people. And then I looked over the evaluations and I was really shocked at how positive they were in their evaluations. But I think, Tommy, one of the things that we have to recognize and understand, I saw this happen when President Trump came out with his executive order against diversity training. The people that walked away, that was fine. That saved us some heartache. You know, those that weren't really committed to trying to do the right thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But those that were, doubled and tripled down on the fact that we need to do our work. So that's kind of how the week went. I'm excited, man. I'm excited about the people that are working with me on my team. I'm excited about hiring a consultant to help us with our own strategy as a business. Because, Tommy, I think all of us need to do that as well. We're not just consultants to others, but we need sometimes, people to give us advice, work with us and our teams on how we prepare to strategically address the growing business needs that we have. So that's kind of how the week went for us.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point that you just made, Eric. Small, medium, and large companies, I think, should look at their businesses the same.
Right.
So the small business, maybe 1, maybe 5 employees, should not look at their business different than the employer that has 1,000 employees.
Right.
Because it should be, short-term and long-term strategies. Diversity, equity, and inclusion should be embedded, baked, and implemented in the DNA of their organizations. That we look at customers, patients, or end users pretty much the same, and that is we're providing a service or a product to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are situations, circumstances, events that are getting in the way of the business providing that product or service to the customer or another business, then there needs to be a redirection of the strategy. And oftentimes, leaders in small, medium, or large companies may think that their answers are only within their own heads.
Right.
Right. So, because 5 years ago, the strategy worked and I thought of that strategy, it will work now.
Right.
That's not always true.
Right.
We're in a new reality. And that's why I believe, not all by any means, but there are some companies that didn't weather the storm last year with COVID.
Right.
Their strategy, was not as adaptive.
Right.
So they, even if they were a particular business that needed the customer to be in front of them.
Right.
Right. Was there a way in short term to really redirect how they were going to provide that customer contact? Okay. If it's through food, transportation, even entertainment, right? And those are the industries that folks have to be there. Mm-hmm. or do they?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're talking over a virtual platform, right? And so there may have been opportunities for the entertainment company to be a little bit more advanced. Netflix blew up, right? Because Hollywood said we can't make money unless people are in theaters. Netflix said we'll take the theater to the people in their own comfort of their home. And Blockbuster didn't buy into Netflix, and some Hollywood didn't buy into it. It's going to flop because we're the powerhouse. That small company, became a mid-sized company, and then became a giant conglomerate.
Right.
That is killing it. So we all need to have different strategies.
And I'll tell you, so let me give a couple other additional shout outs, Tommy. We don't do this oftentimes, but I want to give a shout out to a couple of clients. One is GE Appliances. So they're a new client of ours. And I tell you, I was so excited in our strategic conversation this last week, Tommy, because I was excited because I was talking to people who were bright. So number one, they were bright enough. And so as you deal with people who are intelligent and then have a strong moral undergirding that says we want to do the right thing. So we're smart, we're strategic, and we want to do the right thing, and we can hear. Man, we started talking about some things, man. And you know, Tommy, when you and I are talking to people who are really thoughtful and thought leaders, man, that gets our juices going.
Yeah.
Now together, we're about to do something big.
Yeah.
And we got to the place, man, where we started recognizing that this whole conversation is about talent. And I started, I like to have fun with clients. And so I got an email back from the sister that was on the thing. She said, man, that was one of the most fun discussions that I've had. And I appreciated that. But man, we got excited talking about it. I told him, I said, let me just kind of think outside the box. I said, this is one of my dreams. If it was Eric Ellis's world, here's how I would have it in an organization. In an organization, I'd have a process that moment by moment would be checking on that employee. How are you doing now? How do you feel right now? Do you feel included and fully utilized now? I said, because what I'd be trying to do is protect my investment. And there are two things that need to happen within organizations. In other words, I need to get as much information as I can as an employee on how I put myself in the greatest position to succeed. So that's the one thing I need, as much knowledge and insight as I can get. But then the organization needs as much insight as it can get on whether it's sort of wowing, satisfying, creating an environment where I feel I belong, engaged, included. And so and I started talking about that, and they started realizing what it is we're talking about. I said, and what I'd also like you to do is to know what kind of culture your competitors have. So you can then tell that employee, just in case you were thinking about leaving here on a cloudy day, here's what they do over there. Here's what they do over there. I know all of them. And we are willing to compete for you. That's what it's about, Tommy. And when companies start thinking like that, they put themselves in a strong position, Tommy, because at the end of the day, all of us are trying to attract the greatest talent. We're trying to retain them. We're trying to benefit from what they bring to the table. And we want to fully unleash that person. That's what this is about. And I told him, I said, the reality is that you need to take more ground. So in other words, whatever you start to do with diverse employees, women, people of color, LGBTQ, you're going to expand very quickly. You're going to transition that to your broader workforce. That's the way that you ought to be looking at this. And I'll tell you, Tommy, when you see people's the light bulbs go off in their head, that they can hear you, now you've got something, man. Because you know what, Tommy, I'm going to say one last thing. I'm on a roll now. That too often, Tommy, they're looking at what you and I do as a program.
Yes.
How do we get through this? What's the least amount of stuff we can do? What are we going to do for Martin Luther King's birthday? What are we going to do for Black History Month? I mean, come on now. Yeah. This is so much broader than the events that you're trying to focus on. This is at the heart of your ability to be competitive and to win. And so I was grateful that I had that kind of dialogue with a couple companies.
Yeah, absolutely, at the heart. And you talked about belonging, engagement, and inclusion. And for our listeners, those are three different things.
Come on now.
From a talent management perspective, the sense of belonging is very subjective. Mm-hmm. That the individual and their view of their organization, the workplace environment, as it is aligned with their own personal core values, the sense of belonging is driven by a feeling. And those feelings are very, very, very powerful, right? Because if I don't feel like I belong, I'm valued, I'm respected, regardless of the reality of what people may be intentionally trying to do.
Right.
My impact, my feelings, like, yes, I know they're, trying to engage me, but I don't have a sense of belonging because I'm still the only one that's like me in the entire department, division, maybe even the company. Right. And when I mean the only person like me, is not just race or ethnicity, right? It can be even mindset. I'm the only one that speaks up against something, and everyone else downplays it.
Right.
Oh, we tried that before.
Right.
Now I don't feel like the innovation and creativity of thought, the diversity of thought is valued. I don't have a sense of belonging. And then when I'm engaging, although there are a half a dozen or more people intentionally reaching out to me, is there a real plan or strategy to engage employees? Not just that one person who is passionate about people and say, yeah, Eric, how's it going today? How's your career? Right? They're people.
Right.
But organizations sometimes miss the boat because they don't have anything strategic in place whereby if that one passionate person leaves, will the work of engagement continue? Right?
Right.
That's what happens in HR and talent management.
Right.
And then the third is inclusion. And inclusion is not only do we engage different thoughts, different people, different experiences, but we're always asking the question internally, Eric, when there's any process of decision making, are we looking around the table, looking around the room, looking around the call to ask who's missing? That's inclusion. That's the beginning.
Right.
It's not, these are the usual suspects. We have to look around and say, do we have this thought at the table?
Right.
And if we don't, let's start to include them. Let's intentionally engage them. And I'm not talking about as a token to run out in the hallway and grab someone that may have a physical disability and bring them into the meeting and say, what does it mean to have a disability? That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
Right. I'm talking about the intentional and ongoing effort of diversity, equity, that is inclusion.
Right.
Right. And so none of those really stand alone.
Absolutely. Love that lesson, man. That was very tremendously helpful. And as I think about inclusion, it's the constructive energy that an organization is investing and trying to access my talent, skill, and ability. Engagement in many ways is my decision to take those same talent, skills, and abilities and offer them up to the organization. And so I am a person. That's all I am. I'm an individual. I'm a person. Whether you get something out of me, that whole interchange is about my desire to bring it to you, and then your request, your meaningful, constructive request for me to deliver it. And I'll tell you, so that's that's something that's really that organizations have to spend more time thinking about. The other thing that I did this last week, Tommy, is and we'll talk about it a little bit. What happened at the Capitol this week, following what President Trump said to his supporters? It literally shifted the talk that I gave to a prospective new client. I have a prospective new client. I've got a proposal into him, and the sister that leads diversity there, she said she woke up and she was just praying, thinking about, God, I've got this kickoff session with our diversity council. What should I do for our opening session? And then she said, you came to mind. And she said, let me see if I can get that brother Eric Ellis to do an opening sort of kickoff keynote address. And so she and I talked about it probably on Tuesday, on Monday evening. And then on Wednesday, the Capitol event happened. And I'll tell you, Tommy, what I did then, that shifted what I was going to say. Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of ways to look at what happened at our Capitol. And I think that the easiest road to take is the blaming road, or the commentary describing the tragedy that occurred in Washington, D.C. I know on that evening I had a grown man called me, man, and he was just in tears. Black man in uncontrollable tears, talking about, Eric, it doesn't matter now. And I think that there was a sense of guilt that he's, had great friendships with white people, and he didn't feel like he's pushed back on them enough. And there was some discouragement about, is this really our country? All of that had overwhelmed him. And as I listened to him, it reminded me of the pressure, Tommy, that we're often under, that we don't acknowledge or even recognize. And so that hit me. But what I decided was, it shifted my talk. And I didn't want to talk about blaming or shaming or talk too much about Donald Trump or anything like that. What I came away with, and the message that I delivered to this company, is, who am I leading and to what destination? Because I think all of us have to stop and take inventory on, where am I? What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I leading? How am I leading them? And where am I taking them? Because what we know is that people, you and I know that people get their greatest lessons not from people like you and I,
right,
but from each other. And so all of us have to take inventory on, are there some things that I can do to be more constructive? And if all I can do, Tommy, is provide commentary on the disaster that we're all watching, I think that's insufficient. That we have to back up and say, what kind of contribution am I making to this thing? And so I gave that talk to this new prospect, and the executive sponsor, man, she was powerful. So at the end, when the woman that invited me, she turned it over to the executive sponsor to close out. I just expected her to say, hey, nice job. Good luck, you guys. Happy New Year. Mm-hmm. She took time, Tommy, to summarize what she took away from what I was saying. And I was blown away by that. And I appreciated that. So that's, part of it's a dynamic time that we're living in, Tommy. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so glad that you and I are in this thing.
Yeah, I am as well, Eric. The work that we do and have done for years will continue to have a need for the work. It will continue to bring value to the people and the organizations and communities that are moving along the journey toward a beloved community as a whole. And that beloved community, as Dr. Martin Luther King spoke about, is that community that was void of hate, discrimination, bias, prejudice, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we do know, we're not terribly naive, that there are individuals as well as organizations that lead businesses that have no interest in equity, in diversity, or in inclusion.
Right.
But that doesn't stop us. And what I mean by stop us, it doesn't stop the development of human beings.
Woo!
Right? Those barriers do not stop us. So I would encourage any person, any leader, any company to continue to reevaluate and reassess and reflect on the question, who are you?
Right.
Are you a reflection of the things that you watch, hear, and are gravitating to? Are you that reflection? Or are you a constant work in progress? And you find that even within your own capabilities, you do not have the skills and competencies to really finish the work. And so now, as an individual, we may have to go to another individual to get assistance,
right.
i.e., therapy, coaching, counseling.
Right.
Right. As a professional, we may need to go to other professionals for assistance.
Right.
I'm looking for a job. I'm a professional. I haven't been in the job market for 20 years. What do I do? The other person may say, do you have a resume?
Right.
What is that? That's a gap,
Right.
right? And so now the person who has a need is given a quick tool, a quick advantage of, I need to start with a resume. Now I need to broker that kind of that resume or profile into my professional social network.
Right.
Right. As a company, if you're not looking at yourself as a company and looking at your number one asset, which are your human capital, your
That's
number
it.
one asset,
Right.
when that human capital is depleted, right?
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
And Eric, finally, even in the same vein of that human capital, so we've learned that even in a downturn economy, an upturn economy, there are a number of employees who are looking for opportunities.
Right.
They're looking for opportunities to advance in their own organizations or advance personally by
Right.
looking for another job. So employees either quit and leave, right? Or they quit and stay.
Exactly.
And right now, I think that from just from a courageous conversation perspective, a morality and doing what's right, there are employees in our companies right now who have quit the effort of diversity, equity, inclusion, and stayed in their leadership role. They've quit it. They quit.
Right.
They've already completed the diversity statement. They've already attended the business employee resource group.
Right.
They've already gone to a conference that's now virtual, if non-existent, existent now. They've
Right.
done all that.
Right.
They've thrown a few coins at the local community charity.
They done.
Now it's they've quit and stayed.
Right.
That's what we're dealing with.
So let me say this, Tom. Good morning, Dr. Karen Bankston. So glad to have you, Dan Joyner, Cedric. We're so glad to have you all, Judy, if you're still there. Tommy, I'm reminded of the movie Taken. Liam Neeson. And you know what the number one line in that movie, you know what it was. When the guys had him on the phone that had his daughter, and he was talking to him rationally about it. You don't really realize this right now, but I want to suggest to you that it's in your best interest to turn her over right now.
Yep.
But let me just explain to you that I have a special set of skills. Tommy, he said that to guys that had his daughter. I got a special set of skills. In other words, it is a certainty that I'm going to get you.
Yep.
That is not in question. You need to understand that. You don't even understand where you are right now. And so, Tommy, what I want to say is this, that you and I have a special set of skills.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not saying that in a way to brag, because the skill that I'm going to say that's the overwhelming one, and I think about Dr. Bankston when I think about this, is that people aren't really ready for intelligence that is prepared in the housing of love.
Yeah.
They're not really prepared for that.
Yeah, they're not.
So you don't even understand what I'm bringing.
Yep.
And I like it when you stereotype me and you think you know how I'm coming. And I'm reminded, I said this before, that I've got a client that I did some work with the executive team. Then I told him I wanted to do a session with the union. And so here we are on Zoom. Karen, I know you remember this, Hollywood Squares. That's what it looks like. That's what Zoom looks like to me, Hollywood Squares, you know, yep. Everybody be in a little box. And so I was doing a session with the union. It was 25 white guys, one sister of color. And Tommy, I tell you what I saw, I've told you this before. They were all sitting up there in this. Come on, brother, bring it. We know what you're talking about. You're going to hit us with some racist stuff. Come on. But they're not even ready. They have no clue who I am and what I'm bringing, because I have a special set of skills that really is anchored in love. And I think that too often, Tommy, when we look at love as a value, love as a tool, we describe it or define it as weakness, when we don't really realize how strong it is. And so while these guys had their arms crossed and they were sitting back, Tommy, I just started smiling because I could see that they were on the wrong path.
Yeah.
And they didn't know who was in front of them. And they didn't know who I represented. They didn't know what was on the inside of me. And they had no clue about my capacity to wade through all of that and not be moved at all. And to teach them some lessons, but more importantly, to listen to them and to share with them my understanding of some of their pain. And so as I began to talk about classism, I began to recognize the challenges that they must be under as members of the union. Before they know it, Tommy, uncontrollably, they've moved from this to this.
Yes.
Right on, brother. That's the stuff right there. And literally, visibly, they're in their square, leaning in, talking about almost like you're preaching now.
Yeah.
That's what we bring to the table, Tommy. And I'll tell you, I'm just so grateful that God has allowed you and I to be a couple of soldiers, and many of the people that are in our community.
Yeah.
We're a couple of soldiers. Some might even describe us as generals in the army of human development and caring about people and helping organizations be successful. And I can't imagine being joined together with a greater general than you, Tommy Lewis, man. I'm just grateful, man, that we get to learn from each other, that we get to wage war against hatred, against bias, against systemic racism, sexism, and the like, man. It's a good day, Tommy.
It's a good day.
The world, see, you cannot get healing until you understand and diagnose your sickness.
Mm.
And so right now, that's what we're seeing, is that the current path is unsustainable. We've been telling you that for a while, but sometimes, you know, just in case it looks like what I'm telling you sounds like self-interest, I just sit back and say, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Tommy, before I move us into our topic?
No, that's good. Good point. Again, the community is chiming in. Thank you, community. Good morning. And looking forward to hearing additional thoughts, comments from the community, and to keep this diversity conversation going. I'm excited.
Tommy, the topic that we wanted to sort of share with people today, and I want the community to weigh in on this, is what are some of the examples of the top conversations that we need to have that we shy away from? And so, you know, and why do we shy away from that? I've got some examples here. You know, Black people's our bias against other Black people. That's a topic that I think that we could weigh in on. Envy of people who are successful, judgments against people who are struggling financially. I think even as men, we don't oftentimes in our lifetimes, Tommy, talk about our defeats. We don't talk about easily fights that we've lost, if you go back to when we were kids even. Yeah. And I think that there's some value in us being able to own not just our victories. You know, like when you talk to golfers, all they tell you about is their greatest rounds. Nobody's talking about them 110 rounds, you know, that they got as well. And so, Tommy, I don't know if there's any that sort of come forward for you. What are the conversations that we're not having that we need to have?
You know, another topic that comes to mind is when the beneficiary or even the instigator of hurt and harm has a need to feel comfortable.
Wow.
In other words, if I am hurting someone, or I'm a beneficiary of a system or a process or organization that hurts someone, that discriminates against someone, then I have a a overwhelming desire for the victim, the oppressed, the marginalized to make me feel comfortable. Why is that? And so I think that's a difficult conversation for many people. But that's just one thing that comes to mind as I am doing some training, etc.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is, Tommy, number one, being in denial. Number two, shame. I think that as people begin to experience shame, which shame should be replaced with responsibility. Shame's not helpful. Taking responsibility for your part is. And so I think that if people would move from shame-oriented thinking, guilt, I like that, Murray, and move to what level of responsibility do I have? And then it's not on you to make me feel better. It's on me to take responsibility for whether I've been engaged or not been engaged, or whether I've benefited from systemic sexism, racism, any of those kind of oppressive realities. But that's interesting, Tommy. And so, Tommy, it's interesting you said that, because unbeknownst to me, we haven't talked about this. I've got a couple of clients that are asking me about, they want to do stuff on systemic racism. And I said that your boundaries of what you're going to be able to accomplish are going to be shaped by the dominance culture, their ability to be open to change. Mm-hmm. But as soon as they get uncomfortable, then that can limit your ability to make progress. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's because of what you just said there, because the reality is everybody can say, let's go at it. But basically the people who are going to set the rules on that are the dominant culture. And they're going to be the ones that say, okay, that's enough. I don't want to hear no more of your stuff, or you've offended me. This is over. So then what are we talking about then? What progress can we make if it all is shaped by your level of openness and willingness to take responsibility for your part? That's a pretty deep conversation.
Yeah. So like Murray said, guilt, you're saying shame, and some other emotions come up with the person who may originally have felt comfortable and now feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And so my question is, Eric, when a person is transitioning from not knowing and maybe even some ignorance, and they're moving into some competence, knowledge, and maybe even some skill, and now the gap, the void, what is the word I'm looking for? Where that cognizant dissonance,
right,
of what I thought I knew.
That's right.
And what I'm learning, and now what I'm learning is generating this feeling of shame or guilt. How do we as people help that person or those people truly identify that the feeling that they have is guilt? It is shame. It is denial. Truly, because what I have found happens is once I'm starting to go through this journey and I have a feeling of guilt, then I turn to you, Eric, and I say, can you help me develop some skills to make me feel comfortable? And then you give me some techniques in making me feel comfortable. And I go through the checklist, check. Okay, now I have my checklist of how to confront my discomfort.
Right.
That's still on the surface, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm still not dealing with my individual, collective, and maybe historical guilt. Right? So now, if I'm not dealing with historical guilt, historical denial, historical shame, my decisions have become systemic. So we can't even deal with ourselves, let alone try to deal with systemic racism, systemic inequity, systemic discrimination. How do we get to the core?
Tommy, you're heavy today. So let me take a stab at it. Let me tell you the strategies that we've used in the past that I don't think are helpful. So when we as a people who have been sometimes the victims of your pain, see that now you're beginning to get an insight, a window into your role at it. We oftentimes can do what I call pile on. Like, darn it, about time you understand your role. So here's what I've done. And I know that everybody doesn't agree with this, Tommy. But what I do is say to you that guilt is not a useful response. And so what I want to do, first of all, is demonstrate empathy to that reality. In other words, wrongdoing is a behavior that is common to men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I empathize with you. This is why it is so important for us all to recognize that bias is a human condition. Because what that does, as soon as Eric has to recognize his sexism, his heterosexism, then I can no longer be as judgmental or angry at white people for theirs.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I think that people need to do, so I'm going to empathize with you to say that shame is not a useful response. Taking responsibility is. Excitement is a useful response. In other words, I'm no longer ignorant. Hooray! Now that I see the light, I'm in position to take advantage of what I couldn't in the past. So now that opens up a whole new sea of opportunity to take advantage of the talent, skills, and abilities of others, to apologize for wrongs that I've done in the past, trying to make it specifically right those wrongs. I think that that's where we should be going, Tommy. And I think we only waste time if we need you to spend too much time in guilt and shame. Yeah. That's not a useful response. And so that's the way that I look at it, Tommy. That's the way that we approach it. It's the reason why I can sometimes, quote unquote, let people off the hook. I'm not letting them off the hook. I'm relating to behaviors that are common to man. And all we have to do is look at what some of the worst of us, rappers, athletes, people that get a lot of money, get their own little power. What did they do with women and others? You know, because we've been oppressed, are we then always super sensitive to others based on that oppression? Absolutely not. Sin and ugliness is common to men and women. All of us can relate to that. All of us don't have the same power, so that our biases can impact a whole group of other people.
Yeah, once again, Eric, I think those are kind of takeaways that any person could use, you know, that empathy to address most situations, right? I would also add that when we're talking to individuals or people who have at any time in their life overcome discomfort, they've worked through discomfort to some sense of comfortability.
Mm-hmm.
The skill or the competence that they used in that discomfort is a universal skill. In other words, if you have ever experienced discomfort personally, and you work through a process to become more comfortable, you can take that process, that skill, that competence, and turn it to any other event.
I love it.
Work through that same process. You may not become as comfortable as the other event, but then you're learning a new skill or competence.
Right.
So that new skill may be patience, empathetic listening, inquisition, right? It may be the dismissal of ineffective and maladaptive emotions like pride, ego. I have to be right. So now, before I was uncomfortable, and I'm working through my process because my pride is saying, you can get through this and you can become comfortable. And then at the end of the process, you're still not as comfortable. Pride didn't work. So you remove pride and say, that process, that emotion of helping me get comfortable didn't work. I'm still uncomfortable. And so what do I have to do? Let me listen to what they're saying. So I'm going to listen to the message,
Right.
and not focus on the messenger. Because when we focus on the messenger, especially in difficult or courageous conversations, then our bias gets in the way unintentionally or implicitly.
Right.
Messages are the same, such as hate. Hate is what hate does. We should be able to universally see what hate is. That is hate if we know what's right and wrong.
Right.
Right. And then we, being people, we have to have, well, not we don't have to have, but we should have some dialogue around framing up what are those definitions of right or wrong. What is the definition of morality? What is the definition of kindness, respect, value? So then we're operating on a fundamental principle that is uniform and universal. So now we engage in the event and we say, everyone is experiencing the same event. We may see it differently, but
Yeah.
what's the same? What's the common denomination? There's some hate in this.
Mm.
I think, Eric, in transition, that the events of the last few days in our nation's capital,
Mm.
where we had individuals who, in many people's minds, I think, they were acting and doing things that were possibly privileged, possibly overlooked,
Right.
possibly allowed. But the common denomination where there was another movement, protest, where those protesters, if you will, were not privileged. They were not allowed. They were not able to do any of those things. The common denominator is the how do people of different backgrounds and heritage actually see events.
Mm.
If I'm a privileged white person, I do not see the law as being for me. The law is to govern the others.
Right.
So what I'm doing is my inalienable right and not the law. My right, not the law. If I'm another person or another group of people, community, then I am literally operating under the governance
Right.
of the law that was created by men who did not see me as lawful. And that's where there's a discourse of how we're seeing the same event, is that we have different definitions, Eric, different definitions.
Right. Different definitions, different life experiences, different capacities to recognize what is going on in front of us.
Yep.
And I think that some of these things, people will not be prepared to see them as they are for 10 years, 15 or 20 years from now.
I agree.
I'm always reminded of how many people love Dr. Martin Luther King today, who marched against him,
Yep.
who were throwing rocks at him when he was alive. But we reframe our view of history in the rearview mirror. And so I think there are going to be far less people that voted for President Donald Trump in the annals of history as we go forward.
Yeah.
10, 20 years, no, heck no, I never voted for him. Because as they see the picture of who he really is more clearly, out from under the fog of ethnocentrism, then they'll be able to see him more clearly in light of who he really is. Now, there's a principle that we always said was true, that a person's values and their morals and their character mattered. And there are people that debated us that it didn't, that it's all about policies and transactions. And now we're seeing when there is no morals, there is no character, there are no values, that it does matter because it translates into actions. And what you find, I'll say this now, and I apologize to those of you that may be listening that love our president. I get it. But right now, if you look at him for truly who he is, he's never been loyal to anyone. There is no one that built the kind of relationship with him that he didn't demand that you follow every single thing that he required you to do. And if you challenged any one of those, you were run over and then backed over. I don't care how long you demonstrated fealty to him. It was not enough. And whether you're Pence or Mitch McConnell or anybody, or Lindsey Graham. Did you see how they yelled at Lindsey Graham in the airport?
Yeah.
I mean, all his former friends and supporters called him a traitor and just yelled at him because character, morals, values went out the window in place of transactions. Ethnocentric desires, selfish desires. Tommy, we've got to go back to the things that are simple, man.
Yeah.
They do matter, don't they, Tommy?
They do. They do. They do matter. They do matter.
Great topic. Let's see if anybody else wants to weigh in on things that we don't often talk about that we need to. Bill, grateful to have you with us, man. Certainly, if anybody wants to weigh in, I like what Murray said. The best cure for guilt is asking for forgiveness from the ones you have wronged. Tommy, why is that hard? For organizations to do it, for groups of people to do it, for individuals to do it. Why is that hard?
For asking for forgiveness?
Yep.
Well, a couple to three reasons. One reason, so forgiveness, it opens up personal vulnerability, right? Because no one has been perfect. No one is perfect. And when I ask for forgiveness, I may be interpreted as have done something wrong myself, right? The second is if I have done something wrong and I ask for forgiveness, then there is sometimes a human sense that I too should be forgiven, which is not the truth, right? And so the reason why some organizations and some people cannot give forgiveness because they have asked for forgiveness and received it, and maybe it hasn't been reciprocated. Once bitten, twice shy, right? And then the third is, and maybe it's the first, what does forgiveness mean? Right? We have challenges with the two words of forgiveness and forgetting, right? And sometimes people who forgive, they say, I will forgive you, but I won't forget.
Right.
Others say, have you really forgiven
Right.
if you always
Hold on.
remember?
That's right.
Right.
That's
And
good.
every time I sense that event or I'm triggered, then that schema begins to roll. Right. And now I'm remembering the emotions that I experienced in that event with that person, with those people, which the emotion was unforgiving. So now that I'm remembering, I'm actually remembering not necessarily the event, not necessarily the person. I'm remembering how I felt. And that is why we forgive, right? Because I felt. But if I don't forget, I'm always remembering that feeling of shame or guilt, or that's what it is. So I think when we forgive,
Say
forget.
it. Say it. Say it. Say it again, Tommy.
When we forgive, we should also forget.
You got to release it.
Release it.
You got to let it go.
Yep. Oh, so let me add this real quick too, Eric.
Yeah.
Because I had a conversation with some folks on yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And seasoned folks, they're over 50 years old.
Right.
And we were trying to remember a couple of things.
Right.
And the common joke for seasoned people is, senior moment.
Right.
Right. And as I'm listening to the conversation, there was a dozen people. I'm thinking, where did that phrase senior moment come from?
Okay.
Okay. And I'm thinking about this at the same time, I'm thinking about our incredible blessing of our human computer, our brain.
Right.
And our brain has the capacity to only hold so much information.
Right.
And the information that it doesn't hold, we call it forgetting. Mm-hmm. It can be a person's name, it can be another event, it can be anything. And the more seasoned we become, the more events and experiences we have, and our brain simply purges or deletes some of those things that it no longer needs.
Right. Old files. I can't hold on to everything.
Old files. And so my thought is, in the same vein of forgiveness, if we will get older and possibly forget those things that our mind and our brain says we don't need to remember anymore.
Right.
Why do we, in the moment, have to make a decision to either forgive or forget? Hear me now. In the moment, when I'm 20 years old and I am in a circumstance that I need to either forgive someone or forget. So I say, I forgive you, but I won't forget. That dichotomy.
Right.
And not knowing if I'm blessed to live at 60 years old, that I may not even remember that 20-year-old event.
Right.
My brain will forget it. So why don't we, as human beings, think about the future, Eric?
And let it go now.
And let it go now. Right? And that's what I've decided.
I like that, Tommy.
2021. That's why I decided. I have been holding on to certain experiences and things, Eric, over the last 10 years, easily. And people have been telling me about myself, not based on what I say, but based on what I do and how I feel. Right. They have been sensing how I feel about certain relationships. Are you with me?
Yep.
I've decided it's not worth it, because I'm forgetting where my keys are. I'm forgetting that I have and what key is on my key ring. Right. I'm forgetting certain things that are important to me, Eric, right now. And I am not 90 years old.
Right.
Right?
Because our brain is filled up with crap.
It's filled up with stuff.
Right.
I'm letting it go.
I love that, Tommy Lewis. I think that's so powerful. That's so profound, brother. That's just profound. Now, did y'all hear him say that? He said, forget defining it as a senior moment. Free up some storage space right now.
Yep.
That's what you just said, Tommy. Now, let me give you an example of what I just ran into this week in a session. I'm in a session. A guy says to me in that contentious session that I told you I tried to tell a company member, y'all need me. A guy in there said, Eric, he said, I think we as a company have to begin to look more deeply at our culture. He said, because we have tried to be neutral over the years on too many things. He says, and it has benefited us sort of being neutral. And he says, I think that we have to begin to ask ourselves, has it come to a time when we need to stand up for doing the right thing? And my response, Tommy, this was just a response in the moment. I said, actually, you haven't been neutral. Now, that was true what I said. I said, you haven't been neutral. You've taken a side. I said, and you've chosen oftentimes not to deal with the issues of social justice. I said, that's not neutral at all. I said, and your employees of color would certainly bring that to your attention. And then I moved on and da-da-da-da. And then something said to me, Eric, that was right, but it was wrong. So the CEO jumped in and said, well, I think we need to look at the specific things that we are doing. There are really some specific things that we're doing to try to improve our recruitment and da-da-da. And he went on to that, and he almost like erased the guy. And the poor guy, Tommy, he was a guy that was trying to do his work. He was trying to say, we got to look at our culture. And I wiped right past that to make a point that was a valid point, but I left him in a little bit of pile of ashes. But God wouldn't let me to rest with that. God says, you've got to go back. The president has gone on, the CEOs have gone on, and he's talking about stuff and activities and things that we're doing. But you actually kicked this guy who tried to say something about the culture. You kicked him to the curb a little bit. Tommy, I went back to him. I said, you know what? I'm sorry, Mr. President. I got to come back to what so-and-so said. I said, I owe you an apology. I said, I want to apologize to you. I said, because you said something about your culture. And I said, that's the real work. You said that we've taken the easy road. I said, and I told you that you've not been neutral, but I didn't deal with what you said. You said that our culture has operated in a way that we've taken the safe road. You called it neutral. And I didn't acknowledge that you were saying something around, I think we need to take a new look at how we operate culturally. I want to apologize. And his response to that, Tommy, was, I also get what you said to me. But Tommy, we got to do that, man. We got to, and I had nothing. I wasn't holding anything any longer about him. This was all about me now. That apologizing is good for the soul. And we've got to get ourselves, and Tommy, what you said to us, oh my goodness, bro.
Yeah.
You said that we got to apologize and then we have to let it go so that we can open up room in our brain for more valuable things. And I'm gonna take that a little bit further. Because as we hold in our brain that unforgiving thought, it's not a neutral thought. It's an active virus inside of us that's literally eating away at our internal system, our heart and our blood pressure. It's eating away at those in ways, Tommy, that's taking second by second by second of our life. That's what you're saying. You're not just talking about freeing up your brain. You're talking about freeing up your system so that hatred and bitterness does not devour us. Yeah. Love is life-giving, and we need to make more room for love. It's not weakness. It is strength, and it is life-giving.
Yeah.
Tommy, it's just amazing what you said there, though, brother. That's amazing. Man, I cut myself somehow just preaching about you.
Take care of yourself, man.
Yeah, I don't know where I sustained this cut.
Take care of yourself.
Let me see what people have weighed in on, Tommy. let's go ahead and see what Bill Brown has said. Diversity Education. That's the name I give this program. I come here to learn, brother. We love you, man, and you are a wise counselor. I'm gonna tell you this time. I want to say this about Bill, and I want to say this about our community. These are brilliant people in their very own right. We benefit from the things that they say here. We benefit from the things they say when we're in conversation with them. But what you notice through this is that he's not just a teacher, but he's willing to be a student as well. That's what you and I benefit from, man. That's what excites me about conversations, is that we are going places and we're exploring thoughts, fresh, new ideas that may not have come to us with as much clarity as we're gaining from hearing them in this moment, in this this venue.
And so, Eric, that's before we get to Dan's point, that's something that we do as diversity consultants. I'm going to speak very personally. My style of facilitating diversity strategy, diversity training, executive coaching is basically the same. All three of those. And what does that look like? That I prefer not to offer up all of the answers because I don't have them.
Right.
So what does that mean?
I want to say that again, because
when you attend a Make It Plain Consulting strategic planning session or a training, a workforce development training, or even executive coaching, it's a dialogue for one.
Right.
Sure, I may have a couple of slides based on some research.
Right.
And that research is typically referring to another person or some other people's research that I have found.
Right.
Right. Because I haven't done the 100,000 case studies to quantify the research. Someone else has.
Right.
The other style is I just ask questions. Right. So what I have learned, especially working internationally, Eric, that silence and pause is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone says something that may be, against the grain or even with the grain, I'm not overly interjecting my thoughts.
Right.
I'm not. Because in facilitating, it's not teaching, right? And when you facilitate, you allow the participants, the attendees, the professionals to identify where they are in the journey, identify their own skills and competencies in the journey, identify their gaps and hidden opportunities along the journey, and also identify how far do they really want to go in the journey.
Right.
And so if I tell them there's light at the end of the tunnel and here's what the light is,
right,
and they don't want to get to the light, it's all for naught. Right? It's all for naught. I'll close with this, Eric. It's my athletic background, man. It keeps kicking in.
Right.
Everyone on my sports teams did not want to win the championship. I did. Every game I played was to win that game, to get to the championship, to win the championship game.
Right.
If we did not win the championship, it was all for naught. I played with teammates who simply wanted to play.
Right.
I didn't understand that.
Right.
And for those of you who have watched the Michael Jordan documentary, and when he teared up, when he was talking about, if you don't want to play this way, then don't play. That's what that was. If you don't want to play hard and unapologetically to win championships, and you just out here playing the game at the highest level and getting paid the most money, and if you don't win the championship, at the end of the day, you played and got paid, then don't play. Now, I had to understand there are players like that. I had to understand there are employees that are not working to be inclusive, equitable, and diverse. There are employees who are simply exchanging hours for dollars.
Right.
That's all, Eric. I
Right.
come to work, I put in my hours, and this is not voluntary work. This is getting paid, so pay me. So why try to teach the people who don't want to get to the end of the journey? In fact, they want to get off of the ride.
Right.
I say, where are you?
Right.
I'm just stepping over, and then I ask them, where are you going? And just ask them to tell me about their journey, which may not be in this diversity, equity, and inclusion journey.
Right. And so I don't have to waste any more time. I want to bring this up. Murray, what a powerful question. So, as Black people, should we forgive the racist acts of white people and forget those acts? That is a powerful question. So I'll take the first part. It's the easiest part for me, and that is yes, we should forgive. And I think that forgiveness means that I'm not going to no longer hold that against you. So for me, I think that that's the forgetting part. I don't think it's of the technical acts that have occurred, but I'm not going to hold it against you if I've forgiven you. Now, that doesn't mean that I am. So if a person is not looking for forgiveness, and if a person is not looking to change, then that remains an active open file. I think that remains an active open file. So we're not at the point of forgiveness because they're not seeking that. And so then you have to get justice. You have to get challenged. You have to get pushback. So I don't think that all of those are strategies that aren't helpful. I think we're complex human beings. And so we have to maintain capacity for sort of multi-layered strategies. And I don't think that resistance, pushback, protest, those to me are all viable actions to take as we seek justice. Tommy, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
I think that's a great question. I would ask as well, and then to answer the question a little bit. So as we define what Black people are, I'll tell you right now that there are a lot of people of color who may look like they're Black, but their consciousness is not.
Right.
So they don't even see and maybe even experience directly, maybe indirectly, but experience the racist acts of white people. And we have to then identify what are white people. And then we take a look at, once we have identified what are Black people, and that could be just universal,
right?
What are white people universal? Then we have to accept, then at that point, is the Black experience all the same? And are the racist acts of white people are the same, such that we should forget those acts? Because some of the acts, per my experience and research, some of the acts of quote unquote white people are not at all done by the general white people. It's by a few powerful white people that have created laws that will prohibit the access to liberty and freedom based on skin color. That's racist. It's not an opinion. Being the racist acts is that I, as a person of color, Black person, and I consider myself Black, cannot do something because there is a prohibitive factor, right? Now you have people who are strongly opinionated, right, about Black people, but those say they're white people, for example. Those white people don't have any more power than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgive them and I forget them too.
Right. Right.
But if their opinion without their power creates bodily harm, if not death, to me and mine now and in the future, then I have to hold them accountable.
Right.
What I'm telling you is, if let me break it down this way. If you have a small community of white folks who create a citizens council to really protect their community against the laws of the land, those laws of the land, Eric, were created by their counterparts, other white people. And then those white people who created the Citizens Council believed that their Citizens Council wasn't good enough. It wasn't yielding the outcomes that they desired. And so they begin to act and behave in a way that's counterproductive to the people who created those laws.
Right.
It's not working. We need to grow the Citizens Council.
Right.
And then one man breaks away from the Citizens Council, and he's in Pulaski, Tennessee, and he says, I want to start another organization that's the next level of the Citizens Council. And we're going to call it the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the KKKK, that was birthed out of the Citizens Council. And now we're going to not fight only against our brethren who are white men who created these laws that continue to suppress and oppress us, but we need to kind of find a common cause behind white people in general. So we're going to identify these people of color, right? And we're going to focus on them. And we're going to create these acts of racism that white people can congregate against black people. So these acts, these racist acts of white people were not originally universal. But then there were some white people that adopted that ideology, and it adversely impacted black people or indigenous people. And so now you move into the mid 1800s and the mid 1900s, 1940, 1950, 1960, and you have this general consensus that black folks have been done wrong by racist white folks. Should we forgive them or should we forget them? My answer is we should forgive those people. We should not forgive those actions. We should forget those people, never mind them. We should focus on the principalities and ideologies that have these people embrace that ideology. Donald Trump, and I don't like talking about him a lot at all.
Right.
If he did not have people to receive the message, he will be forgotten. Other historical leaders, be it tyrants, be it dictators, or whomever, they had an audience. They began in a small community for their respective citizens, their citizens council, and then got the ear of other people that believed in that ideology and then forced that ideology by law against others. What we saw this past week was not the actions of one person. It was the principality and ideology of hate and discrimination that has been accepted by many, not just those who rushed the Capitol building, but those who sit next to us in the office.
Right.
They too, not all, may have accepted that ideology and simply put together a different program or strategy to execute that ideology. Not rushing the Capitol building, but creating the laws that will either allow that action to happen or disallow it. And that was the difference between the Capitol rushing and the incidences with Black Lives Matter, right? It was the laws and principalities of acceptance or denial. So, as Black people, should we forgive the racist acts of white people and forget those acts? At one point, we will have to create our new future. Or do we continue to live in the historical biography from the last 450 years? You can talk to other people. Hear me now, Eric, and I'll close. And I'm an Egyptologist, and folks talk about reading the good book and how the pharaohs had enslaved some folks, right? And never asked the question, how did those folks get into Egypt in the first place? Right? We're not going to get that deep.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was a reason why those folks were together.
Right.
And now we look at America, and we, for the most part, we're talking about Black and white. What about our indigenous Americans? They don't even come up.
Nope.
They don't call themselves Indians or Native Americans, so that you know, good people.
Right.
The Choctaw people or the Cherokee people or the Seminole people do not call themselves Native Americans. They may refer to themselves that, so it's applicable, it's acceptable to us, but they call themselves Seminole. Black folks, are you really Black?
Y'all in it today, boy. Y'all
Yeah.
in it today. So let me say this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to say that, and you said, Tommy, at some point you have to. You're going back to your original point that we've got to make room in our brain for other thoughts and other things that move us forward.
Yep.
I'm going to even go further, and I'm going to say that there are shades of forgetting. Just like if I say, I love you, Tommy, I do. I love you as my brother. It is different than the love that I have for my wife. It is different than the love that, and so we have gradations of all of that, including forgiveness. I like what Brian Davison said here. Let's be clear. Forgiveness releases the forgiver to move forward and complete their run versus being trapped by the acts of the forgiven.
I love this. I love this. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, Brian, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt here real quick. I got to take a screenshot of that.
Right.
That was the real deal.
Right. And the thing is, and that's what we want for our people, because see, the problem for us, Tommy, is that we spend too much time and energy caught up in our frustrations at the acts of others. We say to each other that those acts are worse than any acts. It absolves us of having to look at our own acts, and it traps us tied next to that old tape, which doesn't allow us enough rope and room to move forward into a greater future. At some point, Tommy, we got to release some of that so that we can make the progress that we need, and that we cannot stereotype everybody that looks different than us as being the same. We hate that when it happens to us. And so I think, man, we are into some things that our people need. And Tommy, you just asked some bold questions, man. Like, what does it mean to be Black, and who's Black? Because we know that race does not exist. It's not real. Race is the child of racism. In other words, all of us are biologically the same. It was racists that decided that it is convenient for us to create race so that we can then subjugate people. And so we can't perpetuate that lie and that world. And Tommy, we've got to look for some new paradigms, because the old tape is not very helpful for us. And I'll tell you, Tommy, that I find that love is healing for me. And what I think that, so as we look at these two pandemics of 2020, the one pandemic was the tremendously negative impact that COVID and the economy was having on all of us. And so there are white people that I could just see them in their hurt and their pain, being devastated in the same ways as people within my family. And I think that if we can find an ability to not see the acts of folks that look like them, or even the acts that they may have done, but we can see their humanity, and we can invest some love and some care and some help to that, we can transform who they are into something different.
So as we're closing out for today, I want to, again, tag on with Murray, who reinforced what you said, Eric, with getting rid of the old tape. And I think that that's what we should do. There are different generations that are listening to our conversation and part of our conversation today. And some generations remember when we were in, as Black people or just Americans, we were in a different time as well. Not that there were just one-off events in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, but it was constant, right?
Right.
And then some people remember where, you know, the early 1900s, there's a couple that may be 90, 100, 105 years old, that baby, it's 2021, you don't have a clue of being one generation away from slavery.
Right.
Right. And so if we go even beyond that, the oldest tapes, some of us don't even remember those tapes. We don't remember the people. We don't even remember all the actions. So intentionally, we may need to think of how long are we going to hold on to the old tapes and maybe create a new collaborative,
right,
inclusive, and equitable movie reel.
We're seeing the limitations of it, Tommy. It's keeping us trapped next to oppression. And we don't have the freedom. Our limbs are not accessible. Our brain and our mouth is not accessible to move forward because we've tied it so desperately to the past.
Yeah.
And so we can't access. That's where you started, Tommy. You said we got to make room in our brain to store information that is more useful for us.
Yes.
Why are we holding on to information and scenarios that the oppressor doesn't even care about? Doesn't even care about. And so you're using up all your energy, all your gray matter to wax eloquent about the oppressor. And I would say that to some extent that fulfills part of their agenda.
Indeed. Yep.
So at some point you have to do that which is in your own self-interest, and forgiving and forgetting and investing, reinvesting that energy is something that's more productive, I believe, is the way to go. Tommy, it's been a great conversation. A few minutes over. If you want to find me, certainly I'm Eric Ellis, President, CEO of Integrity Development. You can go to our website, integritydev, short for development.com. You can reach us at 513-874-6836. Tommy, how can they find you?
Tommy Lewis with Make It Plain Consulting. You can reach us via telephone, 513-421-2300, or simply visit our website at www.mipcllc.com. Eric, it's been a pleasure today.
It's been a pleasure. Murray, we can't walk away with your last question. Do we do away with Black History Month, the atrocities of slavery, and systemic racism? That would be very hard. It is. No, we those are part of our history. So we acknowledge that. Yeah. But we're not trapped by that. That's the piece that we're talking about. It's not that it's in there. When you erase things off your computer, when you erase things off your social media, Tommy, they're not erased, are they?
No, they're not.
They still exist.
Yes, they do.
So we're saying you're never going to be able to get rid of those things, but you certainly don't allow them to trap your present. And so that's where we've been today. It's been a great conversation. Keep having these conversations throughout the week, and tell somebody, call somebody, and have them join us next Saturday morning when Tommy Lewis and Eric Ellis will be here again to embrace with you diversity conversations. Take care.
Take care.